In this episode of the IT Experts podcast, we help you put your sales head on so you can close more business. Welcome to the IT Experts podcast, the only podcast to help MSPs scale to 1 million, and if already there, get to 5 and go faster. At the end of the day, isn't it all about building a business that works for you rather than you for it? I hope you enjoy the show. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the IT Experts podcast. And today we've wheeled in our wonderful leadership coach, Julie Hutchison, to help us out understand why this sales thing can be so hard for so many technical business owners. Good afternoon, Julie. Welcome to the show.
Hello. How you doing?
Very good. Thank you very much. After a completely giggling start, we've now managed to compose ourselves to be serious for the listeners for this afternoon. Julie, today we're going to be talking about a bit around your personality, how it can affect your pricing. Because I'm a techie business owner, I really get uncomfortable with sales. You know, how do I overcome this? How do I, change the way that I need to be to talk to different types of people? All of this kind of like confusion, cloudiness, unconfidence, limiting beliefs and all of this stuff around sales and marketing. And we're going to smash all those myths this afternoon. So once you've finished listening to this show, you will know why you do what you do and how to do what you need to do. Did you like that? That was pretty good, actually. I can't believe that just rolled off quite easily. But before we do, for people who don't know who you are, Julie, would you like to explain who are you, what do you do, and who do you help?
I certainly can. Yeah. Hi, I'm Julie Hutchison, leadership, communication, soft skills coach, and I work with technical experts, I would say, people in tech with technical experts who want to communicate better, either that's for their team or to get more buy-in from stakeholders, clients, and all of those things where you need to actually influence and impact on people in a positive way.
Fantastic. And you work with some of our 7-figure clients, don't you? Late 6 and 7-figure clients, helping them unravels the complexities of the human mind and leadership and all of this kind of great stuff as well. So you're part of the team. We love having you here. And that is why we have brought you back in today to talk about this subject, which actually came up at one of our 8-week alignment sessions that we were having with our clients a little while ago. Do you want to put a bit of context around what we're talking about today, Julie, and kind of how this whole subject came bubbling up?
Yeah, if I can remember rightly, but I think the question was like, oh, well, we don't charge enough, or we find these conversations difficult, or oh no, I've got to go and speak to people about putting my prices up, and oh, that's awful. And so there's a lot of tension, a lot of stress around how do I have those conversations? Can I even have those conversations? And oh, I'm not a salesperson, I don't feel comfortable. And so the question arose was, well, is that why? Is it because we are technical people? Is that why we can't sell? And I think at the time I got on my high horse Ian about it and said, no, that's not actually. It might be a little bit of the case, but it's not totally the case, because what we were talking about was that actually, everybody and anybody has to put their sales head on to be in sales. Because if you are good at what you do, which Ian, I'm sure you are, and everybody listening, I'm sure you are, in your technical expertise, whatever it is, then if you are good at what you do, you're in delivery mode, you're doing your thing at that point. Whereas when you're in sales mode, you're trying to convince somebody of the value that you bring and why they should come and use your service or whatever it might be. But that's it's not a different skill necessarily, but it's a completely different mindset, a different thing, and a different, what you're trying to do is different. And so everybody needs to be able to do that. And so for me, I think what we just need to do is to make sure that we actually put the right head on rather than just be, oh, I am a salesperson. Don't get me wrong, there are some people whose job in life is to be a salesperson, and they could sell any of these things, your stuff, my stuff, anything, Mars bar, you name it. And they're just naturally good at that. But even they have to practice doing it. So everybody has to put a sales head on. And I think what we need to do is to understand that we might have limiting beliefs around what we are or are not, when actually what we can think about is, what do I have to do? How do I have to show up to be able to be having these sales conversations? How do I have to be different? Doesn't mean I have to be a salesperson, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, and it kind of reminds me of a time, my back in the day, a guy who taught me an awful lot, a guy called Matt Elwell from the Elite Closing Academy. He's not listening to this, but if he did, he would shout him out. And he always talked about are you wearing your sales cloak or are you wearing your serving cloak?
Yeah.
And when we're in coaching mode and we've got a room full of clients in here, we've got our serving cloak. The most important thing in that room right now is to serve our clients, serve, give them everything that they need. And yet, when particularly myself's out there, maybe doing a keynote speech, I'm not in sales mode, but I'm in education and a different type of serving mode, and you're helping and supporting. And I think it's literally you've got to have those. As you say, it's not a it don't have to be one or the other, but be understanding when you kind of need to do that is really important. Talk to me about how we can build self-worth. So you said at the beginning, I'm not worthy. I'm only a technical guy. I can't sell. But when most MSPs that we talk with who are techies, and we appreciate that some of them aren't, but most of them are techies, and they get a referral and they get in their happy place and they talk about the tech, they sell the service, and they're kind of happy and it's great and it all works. They're in their comfort zone, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they've then got to come out of their comfort zone every now and then, and they might have to go and do an event. They might have to go and do, a learning lunch or an educational talk or something like that. And, they don't say it as much, but we know that they say, no one wants to listen to me. I'm not that important. Why should I be that person that they've chosen, or should I do that? I'm scared. I'm not, let's have a little bit of a conversation about where does this kind of self-worth come from? How do we help build that confidence? How did this kind of like show up, and how do we identify it?
So I think if you know, okay, you know what you do, you're great at, let's say, the tech side of things for your guys, then you are often to the point where you're unconsciously competent about what you do. Okay. And that means that you probably do one of two things, which is either you kind of like gloss over all the detail and be like, oh, this is just, I'm going to try and embarrass myself now, but this is just putting in some cable in, or the doing the thing or whatever.
No,
And it's a
doing
just.
things very technical.
Oh, I know, yeah. Or you swing the other way, which you give everybody every single like level of detail. And the problem is that, well, actually, if we want to, whether we're selling literally like, oh, do you want to buy one of these? Yes or no, or we're speaking at an event, and that's selling in a way. What we need to do is be thinking about, what do people need from us and how can I give them value? But because we put pressure on of like, oh, I need to be interesting, I need to be knowledgeable, and I need to be everything. What happens, I think, is that we put so much pressure on ourselves. Instead of thinking, oh, I need to do it, what we really need to be thinking about is to be interested as opposed to be interesting. And what I mean by that is, if you think about it, the people sat in front of you, if you're talking, whether you're talking at a networking event or whether you're talking at on a stage, or if you're talking one-to-one with somebody and like literally sitting down and selling them something. Selling isn't about having, I'm going to call it the Mars bar again, and trying to sell them a Mars bar. Selling is about finding out what they actually need.
Yep.
And so whether you're standing in front of them on the stage, really what you're trying to do is to find out what these people need and talk about what they actually need and give them the value of what they need. So that's what I mean by being interested instead of interesting, because it takes the pressure off. And so if you think like, well, what do they actually, these people sitting in front of me, what do they really need? I don't need to worry about whether I'm good. It's more about how can I serve them still. And therefore, if I can find out what they need, all I've got to do is match up what we've got to their need. And I'm exchanging value rather than giving them the nth detail about my Mars bar or whatever it is that I'm talking about, giving them all the, the good old classic of like features, not benefits, like, oh, I'm saying it's, it's brown and it's sticky and it's this, and, I don't need to tell you all of that. What is it that you want from, what's your problems? What's going on? And so I think that a lot of the time we feel like we're not worthy because we're trying to be interesting when we should be interested. Yeah, take that pressure off of ourselves, though. If they're like, it's not about, they don't really care whether you've got brown hair, white hair, no hair. It's much more about how you serve their need. Okay, and so the problem happens is that we, because I'm not a techie as you, I've got an engineering degree, but I'm not a techie in the same way. But like, because we know a lot, we feel like we need to give everything, all of the details of that Mars bar that we've got. Yeah. And so we justify. And what that means is that we're also start going into all this detail about like how many hours of stuff or how many ones of these things. I can't even think, don't even know what they are. But like it goes into all this like lists of details and things of what you get and everything else. And we forget to look at what does the person actually need. And then we get ourselves tied up in knots because you're trying to be interesting and actually it's hard work. When we change it around and think, what's the value? How can I actually consult, ask them, find out what people need? And it still works when we're doing that, the standing on the stage, because we should be looking at who's in that audience and what is it that what's their problem or what do they desire? Which one of those? I don't know, probably both. And so I think if we can focus on being more interested, we don't have to be worthy.
Because you're relieving the pressure then, aren't you? You're taking away the pressure of, I've got to give in this conversation. I've got to talk. When in actual fact, the basics of sales at the beginning is listen only mode. I'm just going to listen to what you're saying. I'm going to hear the words that you're picking up. I'm going to resonate with the language that you've got. I'm going to mirror your words that you're using in that language. And when the thing pings and says, oh, what I do here can solve that problem that you've currently got, then you start having, that more of a conversation because you're interested, as you kind of say, when you're into that conversation.
And what that means is that person then sees value in what you do. It's not just a list of services. It's not just a bunch of stuff. And because they see value, that you've solved their problem, they're willing to pay more. And they're much more interested in, paying you good money for the problem you solve or the value you can give, as opposed to this lift of service. And so I think that what happens is that when we're, that initial question of like, are we charging low prices because we are techies? It's like, no, but maybe you get yourself tied up in not because you think that's what you need to give techie, when actually the people buying off you are probably not as techie as you, don't even want to know that. They want you to solve the problem that they have. And so we need to get out of those weeds and start being able to ask better questions and being consultative, and then being the ability to match that and match their needs. Now, when you think about, if you ask that question of are techies better at that or not better at that, I think sometimes we've got people who are perhaps a little bit less extrovert, less communicative sometimes, and therefore that doesn't mean that they can't do it, but it might mean that they don't feel like they can do it, let's say. And even if you've got people on the other end of the scale, and we know that in the MSP Growth Hub, we've got people who are much more outgoing and are more confident in that. But again, they might still need to think about, well, if it's consultative and if it's listening, I need to be able to listen and match and mirror and use those communication skills. So I don't think it matters so much about where you are, but about understanding, well, what is my style, if you see what I mean? Where am I? And be mindful of that, let's say. Oh, I was going to, my other point is that I think a lot of the time, the reason why we feel we're not worthy is because we hide from it, because we don't like it, because we're uncomfortable. We feel like, oh, I'm not very good at this and I don't know how to do this, so I can't be a salesperson. But that's just a belief. And I think it's wrong, because actually, when you look at it, as your chap said, I can't remember his name now, you said about every salesperson, even if they're selling that Mars bar, and I used to work for Black & Decker, I used to be in sales for Black & Decker, and even then, if I was selling a drill or a lawnmower, I had to practice. I had to get good at understanding, well, what value did my product bring? What are my customers' problems? What do they need? And what are the good things about, what are the benefits of my lawnmower, or whatever it might be? And so I think the belief is I either am or I am not good at sales. But actually, you are only good at sales. There's probably like the 0.001% of people that are good at sales just because they've got the gift of the gab and they actually can listen, because it's not just about gab, it's about listening. But the rest of us, even if you're in a sales role, need to practice, to work on it, to have training. And so nobody really got that good at sales just by being like that, apart from that little tiny 0.01%. So I think often people think, oh, I'm not a salesperson. It's like, well, one, you don't need to be. And two, what do you expect? Like, we're never going to get good at something that we don't do, or we don't practice and we don't train. And I think that's why we have to talk about it. And in the Growth Hub, we talk about it a lot because people are like, oh, I can't do it. But actually, when they start to do it, when they have a go, they're like, oh, that worked. What you told me, Ian, that worked. Or what you said, Julie, that worked. And then they get more confidence and then they start to do it. So I think actually, in relation to that question of like, put your sales head on, put your big girl or boy pants on as well, and be prepared to practice and to get it wrong, not to be perfectionist in it, because obviously that's a little bit inherent in the way we are in sort of tech industries. But if you are willing to do that, then you can overcome all of it by actually just getting out there and trying.
And it's just like a sales muscle, isn't it? The more you exercise it, the more confident you're going to get, the more likelihood you're going to stand in front of people and command that expertise and that whole thing there. What have you seen over the years? People, I can see people now driving down the motorway, listening to the podcast, and they're thinking about practice. How do I practice this? What do I need to do? What are the things that you've seen worked well over the years when somebody is practicing, or methodology that people have helped practicing? Because some people might find that might be a bit weird.
What the actual fact
Yeah,
of
who would I practice with? Would
Yeah.
it be someone within the business? Obviously, I don't want to go and burn up any prospects, because if I'm practicing on someone and they say no, it's like, oh, that wasn't the plan. Julie told me I need to practice on you. Can I come back next week and have another go? It's not going to work like that, is it? So how would somebody practice within a...
Well, I think if you've got like a few people who are in that area, or you're in that area, you need, if you don't feel that you can go out, I might say I challenge that a little bit, but there would be a caveat on that. But if you don't feel that, the dreaded word role play, nobody likes a role play, do they? But everybody likes a practice, because let's just say you've got two people in, actually just did go through and said, right, I'm gonna practice my listening skills. And I mean, we did something in the Growth Hub. We're going to be doing a bit more of it around like the coaching model. Okay, we've talked about it before, but like about how do you actually do consultative? How do I ask the right questions? Well, why don't you make a list? And I'm sure we will have a list somewhere. I will create it if we don't have it. If you want one, a list of the questions that you could ask somebody, the information that you really need to be able to answer those problems, and get practicing asking open questions, asking I was a police officer in a previous life. It's a bit like a police interview in a way, but in a nice way. It's about getting that person to feel comfortable. So building rapport, helping them to feel like they want to be in the room with you in the first place. And then asking questions that show, and I said before, interested, not interesting. It is not about you. So tell me about your business. Tell me what's going on for you. What's working, what's not working
Brilliant
with your
question.
IT,
Yeah.
and all those kind of things, right? And so what you're doing then is you're practicing that muscle that you talked about of asking open questions. And as you can see, there's nothing in there that needs me to spout a whole load of stuff at anyone. And then, if you think about it, what we're trying to do is to help them and you understand the gap between where they are and where they want to be. Okay, that's what sales is. If there's no gap, they're not going to buy anything. Okay, so when they're telling you this is where I am, this is where it's like, okay, well, where do you want to be on that? Again, that's another question. It's not an answer yet. So it's like, well, what's wrong with that? What's not working for you? Where would you like to be? And they're like, well, I just want to be, I don't know, I want my internet to work. This is me. I want my internet to work without dropping out. And I want my, all my passwords to be sorted out. And I want my thing, all those things. And you're like, okay, so what's not working about that? So you're still understanding the problem and still talking about them. And then eventually what you're going to be thinking is, yeah, actually, is there a fit between what I have, what I can give as value, and in that it would solve their problem and be of value to them? And what we know is that people will always pay money if you can solve that problem, because the question that I probably should have asked you before this is, what does that cost you? Right. So if I'm the customer and I've talked all of that about all of my problems, this is what's going on, this is going on, what's that costing you? Oh, well, I had to sit for 2 hours and not do anything the other day because nothing was working, and that's 3 days we were couldn't use the phones or whatever it is. What's that costing you? What's that costing you? And then whatever you're offering, if it's going to take away that cost As long as it's not, you're not charging them more than it's going to cost, then it's going to be a return on their investment. It's going to be a value. So you're offering a value. So what I would do is I would practice those kind of conversations with everybody and anybody. Your tech staff, even if they're not in sales, it would be good for them to have those kind of conversations, those kind of coaching, consultative conversations with people, because if something comes up, then they then will be more confident to actually ask a question. Because you can see that there, I am not having to remember every service. I'm not having to bleat on about my technical expertise. What I'm doing is understanding the needs of my customer.
And as you say, that the key thing for there that's just popped for me is that what's the impact of not doing this? So we're not going to have a secure network. We're not going to have an efficient network. It's going to go down. We're going to lose money. We're going to lose money. Okay, how much money are you going to lose? Well, if that all goes down, we could lose 30 grand a day. Okay, all of a sudden, £1,000, £2,000 a month managed service doesn't sound too bad, does it? But obviously, that's in your head. It's not there just yet because you're not finishing the proposal. It's interesting, Julie, because it reminded me of a conversation. So I'm going to absolutely spill my guts now and give you listeners some amazing advice I gave one of our clients this week, which was really cool. So he'd done some surveys before, trying to get people to come in and do some surveys. So they come up with 10 questions. And just where Julie just mentioned about, what's the gap? Where are you in that gap? How do we close that gap? Oh, my service closes that gap. Great. And then it gives you the outcome that you want, the value-based outcome that you want. And it was interesting because this guy had said, the survey didn't work on the website. So I said, okay. And what were the questions? So he showed me the questions and I thought they're really, really great questions. But the problem was, so I said to him, I said, okay, so if you got somebody on the phone and you offered them a security audit checkup, whatever you want to call it, and then you actually talked through those questions, like the script you were just talking about, how do you think that would pan out? And he said, well, I'll probably close them. I said, right. So if we go back to your website, there is nothing there compelling to take the quiz. What's the value in me filling this quiz out? Why do I need to do it, or this assessment? I don't understand what I need to do it. And where, Julie was just talking about being interested, in what they're doing. Be interested by asking these great questions. All of a sudden, you're moving them, building rapport, mixing it all together, just by a simple 10-point quiz that you're going to score 1 to 5 and just say, where are you on this scale?
Yeah, because what you're doing there, Ian, is that where I said find out what's going on for them, what you're doing is just using a framework in a specific area of what's going on for them, and you can expand, or when they say, oh, I don't have that, that's a 0 on that point, and you're like, okay, tell me a bit about that. So you kind of dig in. It's exactly the words, but you're probably going through a specific area in terms of security. That's perfect to use that. I think that's great. And also when you use something like that, it also gives you a confidence a little bit, really. I suppose if you're feeling not so confident, because you've got dare I say, a script, I mean a list of questions.
Structure.
A structure, that's a beautiful word. Because you've got that, you can feel more secure in that. But it's not just to ask those questions, it's actually to ask around those questions. Have a conversation, have an interested conversation about them, always about them. And therefore, so if it says, have you got one of these, and they go no, you don't go on to the next question. It's like, okay, so tell me about that then. What's going on? So you learn to ask those digging in questions. Imagine if they committed that crime. You want to know what was going on at the time. How did you feel? It's a bit like
why's everything got to go back to baddies with you?
I know, it was always the way, isn't it? But that's the thing. You never just I know, put your balaclava on. You never just let them just answer that question, because you need the pain. What you're doing is understanding their pain. And you might see it a little bit as like, if I were prodding you on that question, because it's painful, yeah. So it does dig the knife in a little bit. But really, if you just, dare I say it, twist the knife a little bit, because if you're like, oh, what does that cost you? What's happening there? Tell me more about, oh yeah, and all of the difficulty starts coming out. That's where you can solve their bigger problem, but they're more problem aware. They're more aware of how much it's costing them. And that's where they're going to be like, please save me. Yeah.
And if there's no pain, there's not going to be any sale.
There's no sale. Yeah. There's no gap. There's no sale. Yeah. So just going back, Ian, just to that one other point that you said about like, what should we be practicing? So I think everybody should get together with a partner and have a go at this and have a laugh. Okay.
Yeah.
I always say that you've got to laugh with this stuff, right? So get out there. Don't just think, oh, it's horrible. Play with it. Okay. So maybe if you have half an hour on a Friday afternoon and let everybody have a go. But the other thing, I think, this is perhaps a little bit more scary for people, but I think it works really, really well with a potentially friendly client, for example. is start with them. And if you frame it right, they will be very accepting of you practicing on them. Okay. So what I mean by that is like, hi, Bob. You know what? We're trying a new way of finding out about clients' needs and how we can serve people better, aka selling. Yeah, it's a bit clunky at the moment because we've only just designed it. But actually, given that you're one of our best clients, I'd really love to try it out on you. Do you mind if I actually go through it with you? And that client now is going to feel super special, super engaged with you, and probably really wanting to help you get your process right and help you, because people do, they love to help, and they're going to feel, extra special, and they're probably going to be like, yeah, come on then, let's give it a go. And what that means is you can have a laugh with them and say like, oh, okay, I've got to ask this question because Julie told me, use somebody else as a bit of a Julie told me, no, or whoever
Blame
told
Julie.
me. Ian and Julie said, I have to do
Yeah.
it like this. So the question is this, and then ask that question. So it's almost like you've just been given permission to ask that question, and they've given you permission to be a bit not that good. Nearly swore then, didn't I? And therefore, the barriers come down, the pressure comes off, because you've been given permission to actually play with them. Yeah, and they'll probably buy.
I always advocate that when we're going through our new client runway, which is the kind of the sales and marketing framework that we use, when our clients have gone through the hardest part, which is like the first 10% is actually worth 80% of the effort. It's one of those horrible things. But once you've done it, you kind of got your framework and your messaging and your language and all of this together. And then I say exactly what you just said. Go to your best client and say to them, this is, we're just doing a bit of market research. Is this what we help you do? Is this how it kind of like works? And, the light bulbs pop on all over the place. It's absolutely brilliant. So,
because your best clients will want to help you because they already see that value. And so they're going to help you sell more anyway. But if you think about it, you're solving a problem. Don't think of it as selling. Say, well, how many more problems? And if we do account management, and you're going back in and they're already a client, it's like, well, I'm doing this because actually I want to find out, how things are working. But then you uncover all these needs, and then it's much, much easier to upsell them on something, not because you want to sell it, but because they have a need. And if we focus on that, it's not about me trying to. Clearly, you do want to sell something, but if you're focusing on, I'm gonna help them solve a problem by offering them something of value to them when I find out what that is, that's a whole different mindset about, do I need to be good at sales? That means I don't need to be the gobshite who, is the most outgoing person. It means I don't have to be, super, a bit of a D on the disc profile. I don't have to be outgoing and,
you're not. Yeah.
you can just be you as long as you're interested in somebody else. That's all it is.
Thanks very much for that, Julia. And just before we come into summary, now your dog stopped barking, I want you to go and have a listen back to a previous episode, 157, where it was the Ask Stuart series number 7. And it was all about how do I get more from my existing clients? So before Julie gives us, as I say, our top tips for the podcast today, your action points, so you don't just go off and start getting involved in other things, you get some value from the show, and actionable value as well. Go and listen to that show. Think about your existing customers. Think about how you could use some of these techniques. You could do some practicing around these techniques and all of that kind of good stuff. But go and check that show out, because it is all related to how do we sell more, how do we increase the profitability and the size of our MSPs. And Julie, what's the final thoughts on today's show?
First of all, understand the mindset that you have around pricing and sales, and just realize that you do not have to be a salesperson. You can just be you. Okay. So challenge those limiting beliefs about like, I can't, or it's not me. Okay. And then think about, how do I take a values-based approach for my products and services by writing down a list of the questions that you think you could ask to uncover the needs of your client. So where are you now? Where do you want to be? What's that costing you? So as we were talking about in there. And then I want you to go find somebody, whether that's your client, yes, please do that, or it's somebody in your business and then put your big girl and boy pants on and practice. Get used to asking questions so that they are not alien to you, and then just give it a go.
See what happens. Get hold of us on LinkedIn. Julie, thank you very much, as always, for your insights, expertise, and wisdom. Sometimes on a bit of a police scale, but we're absolutely fine with that. That's absolutely no problem at all. It's been great fun, massive value, loads of good tips there to help the MSPs in the community out there. Yeah, look forward to catching up with you soon on the next show.
Thanks for having me.
Take care. Oh, but one last thing just before you shoot off. And if you're curious about how this episode links with the ability to scale your MSP to 1 million, or if you're already there, accelerate to 5, then we want to invite you to come and take the MSP Mastery Quiz. And in just 3 minutes, you're going to get a 360-degree scan of your business where you can identify the 1 or 2 tactics that can help you find more time, engage and align your people, and help generate more leads in your MSP. It's really simple. Just click on the link in the show notes. And if you have enjoyed this episode, we'd love to get some feedback from you by means of a rating, review on Spotify or iTunes or your podcast platform of choice. We really appreciate every single one of them. Now you can go and enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to catching up and connecting with you soon. All the best now.